Good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this webinar, which is dedicated to working with our impacts. First of all, apologies for the slight delay. We had a few technical things to iron on our end, but now we're happy that everything is in order, and we are happy to be with you here today. My name is Katerina, and I'm here with my colleagues Femke and Jenny, and we will be your hosts for the next 1 hour. We are very happy to see so many of you. The numbers are rising, so we have 70 people already joining us. And this is many participants or many representatives from projects from both COALS 1 and 2. But also a very warm welcome to some of our freshly approved projects from COAL 3. Today, as I just said, we will be talking about impacts. And this is something that we have worked with it before. We started addressing or working with impacts as part of our event, which we had in June this year in Copenhagen. The event was called Take Up, and there we addressed impacts as one of the 7 key essentials that we need to pay attention to when we work with capitalization. So during this Take Up event, we all imagined that we are on a journey and that capitalization is a journey. And we were all curious explorers during this event. We took a journey towards the North Star, and the North Star symbolized basically the impacts that each project wants to produce during their lifetime. So today, we will continue our journey together. And we will continue working together towards our impacts, towards our North Stars. And we would like to have this as a very practical event. So the idea is that we introduce you to a practical method, a practical methodology that will help you make your impacts even stronger, more relevant, and more memorable. What is important to keep in mind is that many of you, at least those who projects which were approved under COAL 1 and 2, have already started working on your impacts. And many of you have sent us their examples in preparation for this event. But also we have seen the first impacts in your progress report. So thank you all very much for your efforts. We would like to say that what we have seen is that there are already good examples which are on the right path. But nevertheless, we would like to still work with you to make these statements even stronger. So this is the whole point of today. For those of you who did not manage to join us or who were not with us during the Take Up event in June in Copenhagen, please don't worry. You are not in detriment. You will still have the opportunity to catch up later with that, because today what we will do is a very fundamental part. It's in a way a very standalone part of this the whole concept of how we work with capitalization. But and that is why it is totally okay that you are not with us in Copenhagen. And also we will repeat this event next year, so please stay tuned. Now, before we go into the subject, let's have a few practical announcements. First, as you have noticed, the webinar is recorded. If you have your cameras on, don't worry, because you will not be recorded. We have muted all the microphones for everybody, so everybody is on mute for the duration of this meeting. Also, the chat in Zoom is disabled, so you cannot post comments in Zoom. However, we would strongly encourage you to post your questions in Slido. Please go to Slido on your browser and enter the hashtag North Star code, and you can pose your questions. And for those of you who are not familiar with Slido, you can access Slido either through your computer browser, but you can do this on your phone. So you are very welcome to use Slido throughout the meeting to pose your questions, and we will address them towards the end of the webinar. Okay, this is all in terms of introductions. And now on to Femke.
Thank you, Catharina. And good to see all of you. So I will start by explaining what we actually mean by an impact. The main component, or the main aspect of an impact statement contains the positive societal change that you would like to achieve with your project. This positive change in society can be an impact on the citizens, it can be an impact on the environment, for example. In general, we would say that the positive change will reduce an existing problem, will enhance a situation that is already available but hasn't grown yet, for example, or is improved governance, so that in the end it would benefit citizens or environment. You can have a short-term or a long-term impact, an impact statement that focuses on the impact that you will have during the project, or it can be an impact that will happen after your project has already closed. An example of this is that, for example, you can look at an impact and create an impact statement that focuses on the a policy. For example, you have a recommendation for a policy, and that is taken up by politicians and actually is implemented. So that can be an impact you have as a project, but you can also look at the impact that will happen as a follow-up from this policy change, so that in the end, this policy change will lead to improved environment or a better situation for citizens in the North Sea region. So there we're looking at the short and the long-term impact. You can also have more than one impact. So a lot of projects will have, for example, 1 to 3 impacts that are really the main aspects of their project. So it is totally fine if your impact statement is broader than just one. It is also very important to align your impact statement with the project objective that you have in your application. Everybody that is here has in their application a project objective, and we would really recommend you to go back to that and see what is in there. We see a very broad kind of strategy or setup of this project objective. But what we are working on today is really the impact of your project, and this should be in line with your project objective. It should be in line with what you actually do within your project. So we'd recommend to review your project objective, and we can build onwards from that. If we look at trying to make this even a little bit more clear, I would like to explain what is not an impact statement. So all of you will have activities in your work packages. These activities are not an impact as such. So the activities may lead to an impact. And in general, the combination of all the activities that you do will lead, hopefully, to an impact and a positive change in society. Also, awards and publicity are a great way of reaching the group that you would like to reach, your stakeholders. But by itself, receiving an award or having publicity is not an impact. It doesn't change anything in society when you receive that. It will just encourage your reach. Also, we have seen in Copenhagen and also with the examples that we received that there is sometimes a confusion with the slogans and taglines that projects use. And they're also very good to use. It can really be a great tool to communicate. But in general, they're short and snappy. what we look for in an impact statement is a bit broader. It really gives you a clear idea of what the project is about. And we will dive a little bit deeper in this, but this is the first idea of what is not an impact statement. So if we now dive into why actually we find impact statements so important, why do we care about this? And I will highlight three parts in this of why we find impact statements so important. So the first one is a stronger partnership. We can really see that if you are clear on what your project would like to achieve, what kind of change in the world you would like to accomplish, it gives you an opportunity to really rally behind that and really work together on this. It is easy to be caught up in your own activities, in your own work, in the work package that you might be responsible for. And having this impact statement keeps having tabs on that broader impact on the overall goal that you have as a project. And you can really see that as an achievement that you do as a project together. So the stronger partnership is an element of why we find the impact statement so important. Another aspect is the powerful communication that can follow from this impact statement. You can really communicate strongly from an early stage and reach your stakeholders early if you have a strong impact statement. It makes it understandable what you do in your project, what you work towards when you have this impact statement, and use it in your communication already from the start. And having those stakeholders, the users that you would like to reach, involved in your project early helps them to understand what you're doing and to take up your work at the end when you have achieved what you would like to develop, but you have taken them on your journey with you already with this impact statement and the communication that follows from it. And the third element that I would like to highlight is that it is also important for the reporting. We see it as setting the stage of your project, and that by starting here, it will boost your overall success. And that's also why we ask you to provide updates on your impact statements and your during your reporting. So it is we ask about the impact statement, but also on how you are working towards it, what you have achieved so far. So for those three elements, we really hope that you can see that it's very important to focus on this impact statement from the start.
Thanks a lot, Femke. We are moving on with the next slide. I think, first of all, you have made very clear why we consider the impact statement to be so useful. I would now like to go one step further, which is the actual impact statement, a little bit more hands-on, basically. You might ask yourselves, how should an impact statement look like? And there's a small team at the Joint Secretariat that has developed a methodology for how you can work on your impact statement, or rather what you should include as part, or what you should make part of your impact statement. So the methodology in a nutshell is that an impact statement includes, according to our team, different elements. First of all, there are elements that we consider must-haves, and that's why we classify them as mandatory. That includes, of course, and it's the basis for your impact statement, the positive change. So you need to ask yourself, what is it you want to achieve by delivering your projects or parts of your project? And second of all, what is also very, very important is the question about the how. And the how explains the path to reach the positive impact. So it's literally to explain what you will do in your project to reach the positive change. This is, however, not the whole picture. On top of these two mandatory elements, we have developed some what we call optional elements. We have developed 4 of them. You don't have to use them, but of course, by applying them, you will make your impact statement even better, more tangible, and then in the end, also more convincing. Let me introduce you to the 4 optional elements. First of all, we are talking about takers. And the term might be familiar to the ones of you that have attended the Copenhagen event that Katharina was referring to in the beginning. For the ones of you that are new, when we are talking about takers, we are talking about organizations that may adopt and reuse your work. And the takers will have, hopefully, an impact on what we call the end users. End users are the groups that will, in the end, benefit from your work. To make an example, if we classify, for example, governments as takers that will adopt and reuse the work of a project, this should then have a positive impact on the end users, for example, the citizens. And this could be by different things, for example, applying an improved system or similar. But think about governments as takers, citizens as end users, but it really depends on your project and what your project is about, just to give you an idea. So those 2 are quite important elements. Make sure that you consider them when you start drafting your impact statement. There are even 2 more. The third one is, we call it scale. And the definition we have here on the slide is figures that specify the level of impact. What exactly does that mean? That means putting any kind of figure to any kind of element that you're using in your impact statement. When we make an example here, we can, for example, apply it to takers and end users. You could, for example, say that a certain amount of takers will, in the end, reuse your work, or a certain amount of end users will, in the end, benefit from your work. So always think about putting figures into your impact statement that could make it more tangible in case it applies to your project. As I said before, it really depends on the content of your project. That was it about the scale. And last but not least, we have the question about the when, the time frame. When do you expect the positive change to happen? And Femke has mentioned it before. You can have an impact within the lifetime of your project, but it can also be after you have delivered your project. And that's totally up to you. You are the experts, you define it. And if you want to, you include it in your impact statement. I hope the explanations were clear. I know it's the first time that you hear about this methodology. Just to conclude, we are talking about mandatory elements on the left-hand side of the slide, which includes the positive change and, of course, the how, the path to reach the positive change. And then the 4 optional elements, the takers, the end users, the scale, and the when. In case you have any questions about this, feel free to go to Slido and put in your questions. And otherwise, I would recommend you to listen carefully to what my colleagues, Katharina and Femke, want to say now, because they have prepared some examples in which they will apply, of course, the mandatory elements, but then also some of the optional elements.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Jenny. We are well aware that this looks maybe a bit theoretical to some of you. That's why it is a model. But we would like to make it practical, and we will do that by giving you a couple of examples and how you can work through it step by step to develop your impact statements. So To start with, we have picked up a fictional example, which is of course on a topic which is within the scope of the program. We will show you in a minute how it looks in its original form. You can at all time consult the different elements on the right-hand side, there in the box there, so you can see how this example will develop over time in the next few minutes. So to start with, we have chosen the following example as an impact statement. Our project will lead to decreased energy use, which enables reduction of CO2 emissions. So this is our starting point as an impact statement. And this is something which we see quite often in the examples that you have also sent to us. So our first task was to think or to analyze what is present in this statement. Are there any of the elements already there? And we realized that we already have one of the mandatory elements in there, the reduction of the CO2 emissions. This is the positive change that the project is aiming for. As a second step, we decided, or we had to take this statement and apply both mandatory elements. So not only the positive change, but also the how. And once we did this, we arrived to the following statement. We will introduce a novel greenhouse concept that enables reduction of CO2 emissions. I will give you just a couple of seconds. And I guess you can already spot the difference to the first statement. As you can see already in blue, we have introduced the second mandatory aspect or element, which is the how, the path. So basically the project will work with a novel greenhouse concept in order to reach the positive change, which is the reduction of CO2 emissions. So already this statement is stronger, it's much more tangible, because it tells everyone how are things going to be done and to what effect. But we decided that this is not enough, we are ambitious, so we wanted also to use some of the optional elements and to make this example even stronger. So once we did this, we applied some of the optional elements, and I will give you a second to read through the example. Right, the example reads, we will introduce a novel greenhouse concept enabling the greenhouse industry to reduce CO2 emissions down to near zero. So as you can see, we have expanded on the impact statement and we have included two optional elements. I hope you can take which these two elements, you can guess which these two elements are. Very colorful, very pretty. This is how it looks after we reveal which are the two optional elements. So we have included the greenhouse industry. So these are the ones who will take up the work. And we have also the scale. So the greenhouse emissions will be reduced down to near zero. So as you can see, this is a simple way that you can have an initial impact statement, and you can take it step by step by asking yourselves, have I applied the mandatory elements in my impact statement? And can I apply some of the optional elements to make it even stronger? Yeah. And now to Femke.
Thank you, Catharina. And we have another example for you. And we move from a fictional example to a real example. The Super Project is a small-scale project that is currently running. And we're very happy that they sent us a statement that we can use to work on. it's just great to see an actual project willing to share, and we're very grateful for that. So the project is working in the mental health sector, and it actually works on digital tools for the mental health sector. So the statement that we received is better digital tools for mental health across Europe. And you can see it's short and snappy, and that can also give you an indication that maybe it's more of a slogan. And it can definitely be used in that way, for example, when they post on social media or on their website. And we would now like to apply the different elements and see how we can make it stronger so that it becomes a real impact statement, and that we can understand the project and what they do better than a kind of a short and snappy statement. So we take it step by step. With this sentence, we'll make it a little bit clearer. I give you a couple of seconds to read it. So we are looking at, we will improve mental health care by developing better digital tools. So you can see it's quite similar to the first, but let's see if you can recognize the mandatory elements in there of the methodology that we have developed. So you can see that the positive change is on the mental health care. You can see that that was also in the first sentence, but we have now made it improve so that we know that that is the societal change that we would like to achieve with this project. The how is on the digital tools. So the project focuses on those. And here it states as by developing better digital tools. So if we now look at the elements, we have covered the two mandatory. So this gives already a good indication of what the project is about. But we'd like to take it a step further and use additional elements to make it into a stronger impact statement. So if you can see this, if you can read this statement. We're looking at to improve mental health care, we equip 300 IT specialists to involve vulnerable people in co-creating better digital tools. So I hope that now with this statement, for those that are not part of this project, that have never heard of it, can understand what this project aims to do. And I hope you can also see that some of the elements are now covered in this impact statement. I'll show you which one we have covered. So first, the first two mandatory we already had in there. Then we also added the takers, and you can really see the clear difference between the takers and the end users here. The end users that will benefit from this project are the users of these digital tools. But the takers, and in this case, it's a guideline that the project will develop, is aimed to IT specialists that are actually making this tool. So in that way, you can see the difference between the takers and the end users, and we've added them both in this example. We have also added a scale for these takers. So this, we go a little bit into a fictional because of course this is not the impact statement from the project, but it clearly shows you of how you can be more precise on who you would like to reach. So in this case, we chose to say 300 IT specialists we would like to reach. So the idea is that they would have this guideline, know how to work with it, and actually apply it when they are developing digital tools. One that we haven't added is the when. So you could consider saying by when would we actually want to reach these IT specialists, or by when are we actually improving the tools for these people that are using the digital tools. So I hope that when you see the difference between the first example and the last, that you see that if you do, for example, an elevator pitch on this project, you are literally in the lift with somebody and it's like, what does Super actually do? By using this third sentence, they will have a clear idea of what the project want to do, and also the positive change that this project will have for these people using these digital tools. And you can now also see that when we look back at why we feel that the impact statement is so important, that you can really use this in your communication. So, for example, if we look at these 300 IT specialists, you can use a kind of a scale and say, how far are we now to reaching these 300 specialists? Have we reached them? What kind of apps have been developed? And from that on, you can then develop communication material, which might include slogans, statements that support in that way this impact statement, and that align with this impact statement. So I hope that with this example and how you can develop using the methodology an impact statement, that you can also apply this to your own project.
Thanks a lot to the two of you and the examples. I hope it has made clearer how you can apply the different elements, the mandatory and the optional ones in your examples. Just to have one more word maybe about the example you had from Super, because as you have said, they have come up with a kind of slogan. It looked like a slogan, but I would like to highlight one more time that a slogan is not an impact statement, and an impact statement is not a slogan. I mean, we have come up with this methodology, how you can work on an impact statement, and we've been through it with Super, and how you can develop it to make clearer what your project is about and what you want to achieve. So we recommend you to apply the methodology to come up with an impact statement for your project or parts of your project. You can, as it was highlighted before, you can also have several impact statements. And from that, you can develop all these communication materials, like, for example, a slogan. This is what we recommend you to do. Isn't it?
Yes.
Good. On that note, we will move on now with the question and answers. As we have highlighted before, we have a slide already for you with the hashtag North Star. Please, in case you haven't put questions. We will now spend a little bit of time to answer the questions that we will be able to see in a short while. The questions that we cannot answer due to time limitations, we will answer them after the webinar and then upload them to the website. So please keep an eye on our website, where we will also upload the slides from today's webinar and then also the recording, so that you can maybe also share it with your partners, for example. Let's have a look at the first question, if we can. And we cannot. Oh, yes, we can. Good morning. Good morning. We will receive a yes, that's, I have already answered it. Yes, we will upload the presentation to our website afterwards. That was an easy one. Let's see the second one. Someone is saying, I worked on a 5B project that had to include results, which seem very similar to the impacts you're discussing in this webinar. Would you agree with this? You want to go ahead?
I mean, I do not know, of course, all projects, but of course, and even in one project, because in 5B, every project had to define several results. In some cases, yes, they were going in that direction. Some were more practical and some were, yeah. So yeah, there was some good examples there which were going in this direction for sure.
Yeah, maybe I can add, especially the similarity between the scale.
Yes,
I think that is very obvious, because when we are talking about result indicators in 5B, we were talking about measuring the impact, and measuring the impact is also part of it. But what we would like to emphasize even more here is that you should look at the bigger picture of what you want to achieve, the societal change you have called it. So maybe there, as you said, there is a similarity, but it's also a little bit different.
Yes.
Okay, I hope this answered your question. Let's see what we have. Scale seems to be important. but how crucial is it really that we include numbers in an impact statement? Does anyone, Femke wants to answer that question?
Good question. And again, it depends on your project, but in general, I would say that scale, if you include it in your impact statement or not, just to have numbers from your project, I would say is important, so that especially from your communication, from people can seeing what you work towards, that you have proof of what you do, you can really use well in expanding the reach of your project. So if a taker is in doubt if the work of your project is actually worth it taking up, looking at numbers is just so strong to say, okay, this is the amount of people that already uses, this is what it reaches, this is the amount of money that it saves, this is the environmental impact that is reduced. To have numbers with that, I would say is very important. If you include it in your impact statement, depends a bit on your project. But I would say numbers in general in your project are really important.
And maybe another thing, maybe it will not be possible to define the scale right from the start. Maybe that's something that is not clear to you right from the start. But this is working with impact statement. We don't see it as a one-off. We see it as something that you can basically work on with as the project goes on. So this is something that you can refine also later on in the project.
Yeah, later on. Or the other option is that you have a vision. It might not be the reality in the end, but if you have some calculations where you think this is what we're going to achieve, a certain number, then it's worth putting it in there. I always think about myself, and if I read a sentence that includes a number, it's always more convincing to me, like the example.
And memorable.
And memorable.
And if you think about it in the beginning, it does help you, because then maybe during your field trials or during your pilots, you already realize what type of numbers you need. It might be too late by the end of the project to go back and find those numbers. So I would really recommend to think about that scale from the beginning, even though you might not be exactly clear about what it will be. Taking them on your journey, having them already in your pocket really helps you to not have to go back through your trials by the end.
Very good. I think that was a very good answer. I may judge. Let's move on to the next one. How do you expect to use this impact statement? In which framework or occasions? Can you please give examples? Maybe I can start out. We will, of course, use these impact statements as a program. Especially our communication team will use them later on, because you are the projects and you are basically our program. So we will use them later on for communication reasons also. For me, it is, however, more important that you will use them, that it benefits you and your team, as Femke has highlighted, internally, but also externally. That would be my take on it.
Yeah, you might not use the impact statement itself for your communication. It might be too complex, it might be too detailed. So it is, in a way, an internal exercise that will help your team together behind that impact statement. So you will extract things from it over time and hopefully go back to it and say, is this, when we actually go into this direction of this work package, when you find out results that might not be exactly what you thought, that you go back to this impact statement and say, are we still going on the right direction? Are we still reaching to this North Star that we had in mind initially? And you might have to readjust your work a little bit to see when you're going off track. So it really helps you to keep on track of your project during your project lifetime.
Yeah. Good. Then let's see if we have more questions. We do. So small-scale projects should have an impact statement, but the ambition is not as large as for a regular project. I think that's a very good question.
No, of course, we cannot have the same expectation, and it is all proportionate to the project. So, of course, you have to, what you define needs to be relevant to your project. And as we said, it should be somehow reflecting the objective of your project, or it's not one-to-one, but it is something that you have already defined that you will do. So of course it is understood, it is not expected from small-scale project to have as big of impact statement, but it does not mean that this is an exercise which is not relevant for small-scale projects, because we as we saw already with the example from SUPA, they have a very good statement which shows a very good ambition and a very tangible societal change even with a small-scale project. So it is possible to have a very good impact statement even on a small scale for a small scale project.
Yeah, so maybe the impact as such will not be as big as of a regular project, but the impact statement as such will hopefully benefit you and your project team. Yeah, I would argue. Let's see. Will reason be a possible optional element in this methodology, or is it not important? Also a very good question, I have to say. So I think
is it the why?
Yeah, the reason why things are being done, carried out in a project, I would argue.
Yeah, I think it sounds, and it's, we have actually talked a little bit in this direction, because in some cases, when you, for example, talk about a positive environmental impact, the reason to improve the environment or the reason to work on the environment is a little bit obvious, but in other cases, it's not. Why do we want to change this policy? Why do we want to change governance, for example? Then the reason becomes, I would say, more important to understand. So I think if you look at your impact statement and someone else that is not involved in the project would question, but why are we doing this? Then I can imagine that reason becomes important.
And just to conclude maybe on this one, the methodology we have presented should give you an idea of what you can do. But as Femke has highlighted, if you see the need to include something else to make your impact for your specific project clearer, then please go ahead. You are the experts, as I mentioned before. Next one from Frederick, we can see. Effect and impact seem more difficulties than result and impact. Have I understood it correctly? Effects, the effects and the impacts, then result and impact.
Yeah, I think effect of your project, that for me is very similar, is basically your impact. Yeah.
Yes.
But it's the effect of your work.
Yeah.
I think the result under this 6B program is slightly different, the way we have defined results in the program. So in the 5B, maybe it would have been more of a synonym, but I think in 6B, I think effect and impact, yes, that these are synonyms in this case.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. Hopefully it's clear to you. Otherwise, please post another question. Let's see what we have. How does the impact statement relate to the objective in your proposal? Can I look at you, because you've introduced it earlier?
Yes, and we have touched upon this a little bit, and I completely understand the question. And it's also because we can't be totally clear on the objective in the proposals, as we see so very different objectives in the applications. Some, I would say, are really in the direction of an impact statement. So they already look at, if we achieve what we want to, what we set out in the project, this is what this is the change that we make. Others are really going into detail of almost of the activities in their objective. So that's why we are a little bit vague on it, because they are so different, but they are definitely something to look back at and align your impact statement on your objective. But it does depend a little bit on how you have set it out.
Can you remember the example you have made earlier? Between the three of us, maybe that would make it clearer. If not, not a problem. I was just thinking about it.
No, sorry.
No, okay. Okay, then we hope that was sufficient for you. The next one, should we ask our project advisor for help on how to form the impact statement? And I would argue there is a clear yes from our end. So in case you would like to work on it, which we would very much appreciate, and you can then start doing that in cooperation with your advisor. You can prepare something, you can reach out to your advisor to ask for feedback. It really depends on where you are. Maybe you already have an idea, but your project advisor is definitely the go-to person.
Yeah. It's important just to mention maybe something which maybe is implied, but of course you can approach the advisor. Don't forget, before you approach the advisor, to make sure that you're working together with your partners, so that you're working as a partnership on this, because this is a direction, this is a change where you should be all aligned on.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. We still have a little bit of time, so we can continue. How do you deal with the time horizon related to impact statement? For example, end of project, 5 or 10 years after project.
We don't have a definition.
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't have a definition for it. We are not saying it should be by the end of the project or 5 years after the end of the project. We, as we have said in the introduction, is that it is up to you. It can be both. You can decide to define the impact, for example, by the end of the project, or you can look a bit further ahead and also make an impact statement which takes also a period after the project end.
Yeah, I was about to highlight that. So maybe you develop an impact statement that will tackle an impact, a positive change within the lifetime of your project, and another one that is maybe a positive change after you have delivered your project. So it's, again, totally up to you, but you should be clear in what you're doing.
Maybe as a concrete example, if we look at the project from 5B, the objective of the project was to make a factory blueprint for changing, for making all buildings more energy efficient. So there you can see that in the objective, we're looking at more of the concrete work that the project actually will do. And in their impact statement, they might include information about the scale, the effect that if these factories are all set up, will have. So then they could say, they have said, for example, in terms of scale, 22 million buildings in the North Sea region will be impacted by this change, will reduce their energy need. So in that way, you can definitely use the scale beyond the project. And there you could see maybe the difference between the objective and the impact statement as well.
Good. Then there is another one. I'm sorry, we missed the start of the presentation due to technical problems. We had the same problem. Is the impact statement something you have to approve in the beginning of the project? Very good question as well. No, it's nothing that has to be approved from our end. It's also nothing that is compulsory, but we hope that by delivering this webinar and also having had the event in Copenhagen, we have made clear that the impact statement is something that should benefit you as a project. So really consider it. And as I said, we are not approving it, but I think you have mentioned it, Femke has mentioned it, that when you are reporting on a regular basis to the Joint Secretariat, there will be a question included in the report. It's optional. So in case you're working on an impact statement, then you can report to us where you are with it, if everything works in line, if you are reaching your goal, basically. But you don't necessarily have to answer that question. So it's optional, up to you to work on that impact statement, but we would strongly recommend you to do so.
You could
Was
even
that clear?
see, yeah, you could even see it as almost like a team building exercise
Yeah.
of your partnership.
Yeah.
And if you haven't had a kickoff, or if you have a next project meeting, then you actually sit together and brainstorm on this.
And then I think we take one more question, which is, let's see, should each project have a main impact, or is it also possible to have different impacts from each pilot area? Good question. I can see Katharina is thinking.
It's of course, I mean, you can decide how you would like to do it. It depends very much on the pilots. What are they going to work on? Maybe you can define also impacts on that level, if depend on what tangible aspects are coming out of it. So it's very difficult to say. Of course, you can have one main impact if you wish, and then you can have a smaller impact. I don't know how to call them. I think it will depend very much on your project and on your ambition in this way.
In general, I would say look one step
Above the
it,
pilots.
because the pilots, each pilots maybe that are in the different regions of our program would work towards something together.
Yeah.
And I would start with that on the impact statement.
Because it will be quite difficult to work as a partnership to agree on the impact on a pilot level.
Yeah, true.
And as a direction, it's too specific in a way.
Yeah. And just to highlight maybe as the last conclusion here, it's not a matter of how many impact statements you will come up with. It's a matter of that you come up with impact statements that will help you and that will help the outside world to understand what your project is about, or parts of your project are about, and what you will achieve with it, because that's the convincing part. So not necessarily come up with one per pilot and come up with something that makes sense. I know that's not a very good answer, but I would now like to refer back to the project advisors. So in case you're in doubt, please reach out to your project advisor. And we will now quickly switch back to our PowerPoint presentation, because we have two last slides for you. The one that you will be able to see now in a short while is the one that many of you are familiar with, because we have presented this at the event in Copenhagen in June. It's basically your journey to success. Katharina has mentioned it in the beginning, the journey we did when we were in Copenhagen. It includes the different steps that are needed to reach your impact, and we call it to find your North Star. Today, we have solely looked at the essential number 1, which is called define your impact, because we saw that after the event in Copenhagen, a little bit more guidance was needed for some of you. We hope that this webinar has helped you to be a bit clearer on this part of the journey, the fundamental part, the defining your impact part, and we hope that your journey continues. And I will now hand over to Katharina for some concluding remarks.
Yes, just a few practical messages at the end of this webinar. First of all, the good news is that we are planning for a repetition of the Take Up event in 2024. Somewhere at the start of the year, we hope, but there will be updates on the website, so there will be more information coming soon. So please stay tuned. And for all of you who were not able, so call on one or two projects who were not able to participate in Copenhagen, and call 3 projects, you are very welcome to come to this event. Then what is important also to keep in mind is that, as we said, there will be also guidance related to how to work with impacts. It is going to be published on our website, hopefully by the end of the year, but yeah, somewhere around that time. So that will be an extra help tool for you to see, to help you work with this aspect. As said already, there is a section in our reports where you can share your impacts, or where you are, or how you are progressing in the direction of reaching your impacts. As said, it's not a compulsory, but you are encouraged to share with us. And if you, before you report on this, if you would like to get even more practical advice, you're always welcome to share with your advisor, and we will have a look, and we will try to help you with making your statements memorable, specific, and relevant. So yeah, please stay in touch with us on this aspect and on your thoughts and developments. And with this, I think we have come to the end.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your participation, for your good questions.
Yeah.
And I said the presentation will be online, the recording will be online, and the extra questions which were not answered will be also recorded and will be also online. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you and bye.
Bye.